Tuatha de Danann. It was in a mist, the Tuatha de Danann, the people of the goddess Donna, or as some called them, the men of Dea, came through the air and the high air to Ireland. It was from the north they came, and in the place they came from they had 4 cities, where they fought their battles for learning, great Philias, and shining Gorias, and Phineas, and rich Morias that lay to the south. And in those cities they had 4 wise men to teach their young men skills and knowledge and perfect wisdom, Sanias in Morias, and Arias, the fair-haired poet, in Phineas, and Jarias of the noble nature in Gorias, and Morias in Philias itself. And they brought from those 4 cities their 4 treasures, a stone of virtue from Philias that is called the live fail, the stone of destiny. And from Gorias they brought a sword, and from Phineas a spear of victory, and from Morias the 4th treasure, the cauldron that no company ever went away from unsatisfied. It was Nauda was the king of the Tuatha de Danann at that time, but Manannam, son of Ler, was greater again. And of the others that were chief among them were Ogma, brother to the king, that taught them writing, and Diankeith, that understood healing, and Neat, a god of battle, and Creadnus, the craftsman, and Gaivnu, the smith. And the greatest among their women was Beab, a battle goddess, and Macha, whose mast feeding was the heads of men killed in battle, and the Morgu, the crow of battle, and Eri, and Fola, and Banda, daughters of the Dagda, that all 3 gave their names to Ireland afterwards, and Eadon, the nurse of poets, and Bridget, that was a young woman of poetry, and poets worshipped her, for her sway was very great and very noble, and she was a woman of healing along with that, and a woman of smith's work, and it was she first made the whistle for calling one to another through the night. And the one side of her face was ugly, but the other side was very comely. And the meaning of her name was Brostriat, a fiery arrow. And among the other women there were many shadow forms and great queens, but Donna, that was called the mother of the gods, was beyond them all. And the 3 things they put above all others were the plough, and the sun, and the hazel tree, so that it was said in the time to come that Ireland was divided between those 3, Cole, the hazel, and Keth, the plough, and Grian, the sun. And they had a well below the sea where the 9 hazels of wisdom were growing, that is, the hazels of inspiration and of knowledge and of poetry, and their leaves and their blossoms would break out in the same hour, and would fall on the well in a shower that raised a purple wave, and then the 5 salmon that were waiting there would eat the nuts, and their colour would come out in the red spots on their skin, and any person that would eat one of those salmon would know all wisdom and all poetry. And there were 7 streams of wisdom that sprang from that well and turned back to it again. And the people of many arts have all drunk from that well. It was on the 1st day of Beltane, that is now called May Day, that Tuatha de Danann came, and it was to the northwest of Connacht they landed. But the Firblog, the men of the bag, that were in Ireland before them, and that had come from the south, saw nothing but a mist, and that lying on the hills. Jochi, son of Erk, was king of the Firblog at that time, and messengers came to him at Tavir, and told him there was a new race of people coming to Ireland, but whether from the earth, or from the skies, or on the wind, it was not known, and that they had settled themselves in Moiraine. They thought there would be wonder on Jochi when he heard that news, but there was no wonder on him, for a dream had come to him in the night, and when he asked his druids the meaning of that dream, it is what they said, that it would not be long till there would be a strong enemy coming against him. Then King Jochi took counsel with his chief advisers, and it is what they agreed, to send a good champion of their own to see the strangers and to speak with them. So they chose out Sarng. That was a great fighting man, and he rose up and took his strong red-brown shield, and his 2 thick-handled spears, and his sword, and his head covering, and his thick iron club, and he set out from Tuatha, and went on towards the place the strangers were at Moirian. But before he reached it, the watchers of the Tuatha de Danann got sight of him, and they sent out one of their champions, Bres, with his shield and his sword and his 2 spears, to meet him and to talk with him. So the 2 champions went one towards the other, slowly, and keeping a good watch one upon the other, and wondering at one another's arms, till they came near enough for talking. And then they stopped, and each put his shield before his body, and struck it hard into the ground. And they looked at one another over the rims of their shields. Bres was the first to speak, and when Sarg heard it was Irish he was talking, his own tongue, he was less uneasy, and they drew nearer, and asked questions as to one another's family and race. And after a while they put their shields away, and it is what Sarg said, that he had raised his shield in dread of the thin, sharp spears Bres had in his hand, and Bres said he himself was in dread of the thick-handled spears he saw with Sarg, and he asked were all the arms of the Firblog of the same sort. And Sarg took off the tyings of his spears to show them better, and Bres, wondering at them, being so strong and so heavy and so sharp at the sides, though they had no points. And Sarg told him the name of those spears was Chryseach, and that they would break through shields and crush flesh and bones, so that their thrust was death or wounds that never healed. And then he looked at the sharp, thin, hard-pointed spears that were with Bres, and in the end they made an exchange of spears, the way the fighters on each side would see the weapons the others were used to, and it is the message Bres sent to the Firblogs, that if they would give up 1/2 of Ireland, his people would be content to take it in peace, but if they would not give up that much, there should be a battle. And he and Sarg said one to another that whatever might happen in the future, they themselves would be friends. Sarg went back then to Tuatha and gave the message and showed the spear, and it is what he advised his people, to share the country and not to go into battle with a people that had weapons so much better than their own. But Yochi and his chief men consulted together, and they said in the end, "We will not give up half of the country to these strangers, for if we do that," they said, "they will soon take the whole of it." Now, as to the men of Dia, when Bres went back to them, and showed them the heavy spear, and told them of the strong, fierce man that he had got it from, and how sturdy he was and how well armed, they thought that it was likely that there would soon be a battle. And they went back from where they were to a better place, further west in Connacht. And there they settled themselves, and made walls and ditches on the plain of Mavnaen, where they had the great mountain Bergate at the rear. And while they were moving there and putting up their walls, 3 queens of them, Bav and Macha and the Morgul, went to Tuatha, where the Firblogs were making their plans. And by the power of their enchantments they brought mists and clouds of darkness over the whole place, and they sent shadows of fire and blood over the people, the way that they could not see or speak with one another through the length of 3 whole days. But at the end of that time, the 3 druids of the Firblog, Kesarang and Gnathach and Ingnathach, broke the enchantments. The Firblog gathered their men together then, and they came with their 11 battalions and took their stand at the eastern end of the plain of Moirian. And Nauda, king of the men of Dia, sent his poets to make the same offer he made before, to be content with the half of the country if it was given up to him. King Yochi bade his poets to ask an answer of his chief men that were gathered there, and when they heard the offer they would not consent. So the messengers asked them when would the battle begin. "We must have a delay," they said, "for we want to put our spears and our armour in order, and to brighten our helmets, and to sharpen our swords, and to have spears made like the ones you have, And as to yourselves, they said, you will be wanting to have spears like our Chrysaeus made for you. So they agreed to make a delay of a quarter of a year for preparation. It was on Midsummer Day they began the battle. 3 times 9 hurlers of the Tuatha de Danann went out against 3 times 9 hurlers of the Firblog, and they were beaten, and every one of them was killed. And the king, Tuatha, sent a messenger to ask would they have a battle every day or every second day. And it was what Nauda answered, that they would have it every day, but there should be just the same number of fighting men on each side. Tuatha agreed to that, but it was not well pleased he was, for there were more men of the Firblog than of the men of Dea. So the battle went on for 4 days, and there were great feats done on each side, and a great many champions came to their death. But for those that were alive at evening, the physicians on each side used to make a bath of healing, with every sort of healing plant or herb in it, the way they would be strong and sound for the next day's fight. And on the 4th day, the men of Dea got the upper hand, and the Firblog were driven back. And a great thirst came on Tuatha, their king, in the battle, and he went off the field looking for a drink, and 350 of his men protecting him. But 350 of the Tuatha de Danann followed after them till they came to the strand that is called Treig Tuatha, and they had a fierce fight there, and at last King Tuatha fell, and they buried him there, and they raised a great heap of stones over his grave. And when there were but 300 men left of the 11 battalions of the Firblog, and Sarg was at their head of them, Nauda offered them peace and their choice among the 5 provinces of Ireland. And Sarg said they would take Connaught, and he and his people lived there, and their children after them. And it is them, for Diad came from afterwards, that made such a good fight against Cualain, and Dirk, son of Cribri, that gave him his death. And that battle was the first fought in Ireland by the men of Dea, and it was called by some the first battle of Moytreav. And the Tuatha de Danann took possession of Tavere, that was sometimes called Drum Cian, the beautiful rage, and Leith Drum, the grey rage, and Drum Nadascan, the rage of the outlook. All of those names were given to Tavere, and from that time it was above all other places, for its king was the high king over all of Ireland. The king's wrath lay to the north, on the hill of Hostages to the northeast of the high seat, on the green of Tavere to the west of the hill of the Hostages, and to the northeast, in the hill of the Shee, was a well called Nimnach, and out of it there flowed a stream called Neath, and on that stream the first mill was built in Ireland. And to the north of the hill of Hostages was the stone, the Lie Fiel, and it used to roar under the feet of every king that would take possession of Ireland. And the wall of the 3 whisperers was near the house of the women, that had 7 doors to the east and 7 doors to the west, and it is in that house the feast of Tavere used to be held. And there was the great house of 1,000 soldiers, and near to it, to the south, the little hill of the women soldiers.